Solid Signal podcast for the week of May 4th, 2015. The topic for this week's podcast is broken down and old. That sounds depressing, doesn't it? And, well, maybe it is a little bit, but I'm going to try to make it as optimistic as possible for you. Let's get started. If you're like most people, you made some significant home theater purchases in 2006 to 2009. You upgraded your living room from standard definition to high definition. Maybe you went from DVD to Blu-ray disc. You maybe added a streaming system, but that might have come a little bit later. You might have changed out your home theater receiver at that point so it did HDMI switching instead of S-video or composite switching. The bottom line is maybe you're sitting down in your living room right now listening to this podcast on your favorite streaming player and you're realizing that pretty much everything you have is coming up on about 10 years old. It's working great, or is it? You know, they don't make them like they used to, they say, and the truth is that even if that equipment is functioning well for you, it probably isn't doing everything that you want it to. It's easy to put off buying a 4K television because there really isn't a whole lot of 4K content, but what about the rest of your system? Look at your home theater receiver. I recently did, and I realized that I'm not ready for 4K because I do not have a receiver that supports HDCP 2.2. Matter of fact, there are only about 6 or 7 of these audio receivers in the market right now, and so I'm actually recommending that people don't buy one today, that they wait a couple of months because the market will be flooded with them. You need HDCP 2.2 if you're going to use an audio receiver, a television, anything for 4K content. And I'm suspecting there's going to be a lot of 4K content coming up. What about networking? You might have purchased a smart TV or streaming device, but really you're going to want everything in your home theater to connect via Ethernet or Wi-Fi in the future. Why? Because your next remote control, the one that you really want, is probably going to demand it. It'll be something that if it can be controlled by IR, it will be controlled by IR, but if it can be controlled by Ethernet, that's even better because that doesn't require line of sight, and it's often easier to send long strings of commands over Ethernet. DirecTV receivers can get commands right from your smartphone or tablet. Most audio receivers and televisions can now too, as well as streaming devices. There's an app for most of them, and you probably already have them, but you may not, depending on how old your streaming device is. And as I said, I'm really thinking that a lot of us did the same thing that I did and bought a lot of stuff prior to 2009, and when we look at that stuff, that's now 6 years old. 6 years is an eternity in the home theater business, and oh no, we don't really want to go out and spend that much money again, but you know, we're gonna. I mean, if we can afford it, if it's financially responsible and all of that. Now let me back up a little bit. I'll admit that personally I'm old school, and I would love it if I could buy something like a AV receiver or a television and know that I'm going to have it for 20 years. But that's just not the world that we live in, at least not at the moment. There's always going to be better stuff, and the good news is that most of the home theater equipment today is really priced so you can replace it about every 5 years. Even the best and baddest 4K television right now is only going to be about $2,000. And most 4K TVs that you're really going to want are about in that $1,000 to $1,500 range. A decent AV receiver that's not designed to, for example, provide amplification for an entire stadium isn't going to set you back much more than $300 or $400. And the networking equipment you need has never been less expensive. Now you're asking yourself, why, Mr. Podcaster? Why are you talking about this stuff on the Solid Signal podcast? And I'm glad you asked. Because even though SolidSignal.com does not sell audio receivers or Bluetooth-enabled remotes and stuff like that, we do sell all those little things that you're going to need. And this is how I plan to keep the lights on here at the Solid Signal podcast, and that's by reminding you and asking you as politely as possible to shop at Solid Signal for the kinds of cables and connectors and networking equipment that you're going to need for that home theater system that, let's be honest, you'll be looking at replacing around 2021. Okay, have a great week.